Hi guys, welcome to the EDMacDesigns channel. My name's Anthony, aka DIGIHILL. You can have a look for me on Flickr and join the Photographer Universe group. Okay. Right, so today I'm going to be showing you the basics of editing a raw file on Photoshop. So what is raw? A raw image file contains minimally processed data from the image sensor of a digital camera. Raw files are not yet processed. They're also known as digital negatives. There are many types of raw files. At the moment I'm using a CR2 because that is one of Canon's raw files along with CRW. If you've got a Nikon, yours is probably NRW or NEF. Or if you have a Kodak, KDC. Okay. So we've got a preview of our image. We've got a few tabs along here, different settings, and we've got our histogram at the top. So what are the benefits of RAW? It's a lot higher image quality. You get more accurate pixel values. You also get a lot finer control. You can manipulate more parameters. Like I said, you've got a live preview of what's happening when you're doing it. You've got non-destructive changes as well, because only metadata is changed. And you can also bypass camera sharpening and noise reduction, because when you're editing on RAW, that's all left to you, as you can see here. I'll go through that in a second. The only real drawbacks from using RAW files are they're huge compared to just the standard JPEG, and it's an extra workflow. So if you are doing it for a living and you're editing a bunch of RAWs, it can be time consuming, but in my personal opinion, more beneficial. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at the basic tab, as you can see here, and some of the settings. So we got our white balance. At the moment, mine is just as shot, so it's basic in-camera setting. Basically all the white balance is going to do is change the color mix for color correction. If I go to automatic, daylight, cloudy, shade. At the moment I think mine is better off as shot. It's pretty much spot on. We've also got temperature, so obviously temperature, warm and cool. Help you a bit more for your color correction. If I want the image to be more intense blue, I'll have a cool temperature. If I want to try and even it out a bit more, I'll put it up to a little bit warmer. At the moment I'm okay with the blue, so it's nice for the sky. Okay, I've also got color correction in the form of tint, which goes from green to purple. Okay, I wouldn't worry about temperature and tint too much at the moment, so it's just these guys here. If you are in a rush editing RAWs, or they're not for anything special or commercial, you can always just use the auto, and they'll pick the best settings that it thinks apply. So I'm going to put it back to default, and we're going to have a look at the exposure. So darken, brighten. Basically with the exposure, it enables us to correct underexposure or overexposure. So at the moment I'm just going to set mine down a bit. Okay, brilliant. Recovery. Recovery is basically used to restore detail to overexposed areas. So at the moment I'm pretty fine with recovery, so I've got nothing overexposed. Good way to see this, if you look at your histogram at the top, select these options here, and what you'll get are little colour patches which show you what's overexposed and underexposed. But at the moment we don't have anything. So when I start to bump the exposure up and it gets too bright, it starts to turn red. So it's letting me know that it's overexposed and I'm going to lose detail. So if I just bump it up a little bit and use recovery, as I bump recovery up, you'll notice that the colour is disappearing. Okay, so let's put it back, put my exposure down again. Brilliant. Yeah, so recovery I don't really need, but if you get any overexposure, it's especially good on sky. So if you've got a nice landscape photograph, a nice sky, it's a little bit overexposed, then just bump your recovery up and it should sort it out for you. So we've also got fill light, which is there to recover detail which is lost in areas that are underexposed as opposed to overexposed. So I just use the fill light. You'll notice it's injecting artificial light into the image. Okay, so when you're using fill light and you bump it up, your images can look rather flat. So that's where your blacks come into the equation. It's to add depth, intensify your shadows, and to pretty much leave your highlights untouched. Okay, so we're pretty much equaling it up here. Brightness, just the overall brightness of the image. So I'm just going to set mine around here. Lovely. Contrast, just the difference between light and dark. You can also get color contrast and tones and textures contrast. So if we just bump this up, you can see the difference. What if I put it down? Okay, I don't want to bump the contrast up too much, otherwise I'll be left with not very appealing looking picture. So I'm just going to put it up a little bit. And we have clarity. Clarity basically just adjusts midtones by decreasing and increasing local contrast. So if I put it down, you can see it's more of a smooth texture. Clarity is better for portraits, people, faces, as opposed to photos like this. What I really want to do is bump the clarity up. So now you can see a lot more detail in the smoke plumes coming from the planes. Okay, so I'm going to put it up to quite high. Then we've got our vibrance and our saturation. With the vibrance, basically it adjusts the saturation of the lowest saturated colours. So vibrance is a good one to go for. Never set your vibrance and your saturation too high, otherwise you're going to be left with photos looking like this. This is pretty awful, so I'm going to put them down. To be honest, I'll leave this saturation on the basic menu at 0. I tend not to bother with that one, and I'll show you why. So I'm just going to put my vibrance to about 20, or 21, that'll do. Okay. So we're going to come to our tone curve tab. So we've got parametric and point. Parametric, it's going to allow me to make quick adjustments to the overall tone, whereas point will give me greater and more customized tone adjustments. So you can have linear, medium, strong, and custom. But for now, I'm just going to go with parametric. Okay, so we're looking at highlights. If I bump the highlights up, you'll notice the brightness in the white plume intensifies. I'm just going to lower it down to about, 70 is good. Lights, obviously how much light is in the photo. So if I put it down, there's not a lot of light. If I put it up, there's too much light, as you can see the red blotches. So I'm just going to put it down so I don't lose any detail, but it's nice and bright. Great. Darks, pretty much the same, but we're controlling the dark tones. So if I put darks down, it's going to look rather dark, and you can see the blue colouring, which is highlighting the fact that I'm losing detail due to underexposure. if I put it too high, and it looks pretty flat. So darks is good to go where it is. Shadows. As you can notice, all the way down, it's a little bit unappealing. All the way up, it's pretty flat. So shadows and highlights I wouldn't worry about too much. I mean, yeah, when you're having to go, have a play around with the lights and darks. Take notice on the histogram we've got here. You can also adjust the waypoints. So if I move these over, the midpoint and the white points. If you have a look here at the curve, you'll see starting to adjust when I play around with the highlights. So I'm going to put it back to where it was. Okay. So detail. Moving on to detail. Detail, basically sharpening. What is sharpening? Sharpening basically finds the edges within the image and increases the contrast along those edges. At the moment we're pretty alright with detail. Nothing's really blurred. If you zoom in 100%, which is quite often good sometimes. As you can see, I've got a bit of red clipping here. So what I'm going to do is have a look, getting rid of that clipping. I can put my highlights down, I can put my lights down. Put my exposure. But to me that looks too dark. So I'm just going to leave it where it was. Okay. Yeah, so sharpening. Alright, so the amount, if you do sharpen, always going to 100% or more, as it'll tell you itself, more often than not, that's the perfect preview, 100%. That's when you will see live changes taking place. Like if I'm sharpening up, you'll start to see when it's starting to look too grainy, so I'm going to put it down. Up here is fine. Like I said, I don't need to touch sharpening too much on here because the detail's pretty good on the planes. But if you have an image, say sort of a moving subject, say it's like a bird, for example, you can zoom in on the detail, feathers, and then you can just sharpen however much you want. So yeah, so the amount basically determines how much of a contrast to apply to those edges. The radius determines how many pixels either side of the edge are affected by the contrast change. So if I put this sharpening up here to 70, so you can see the changes in the radius. If I put that up, okay, see it's become less grainy than if I put it all the way back. It's much finer. So I put my sharpening down. Detail. Detail determines how much the sharpening process affects highlighted edges. If I put detail up, sharpening, the radius, you should see the effect. When I put detail up, you can see the highlights coming through. When I put it down, they disappear. Like I gave an example earlier about the bird. If you like, well, photographing wildlife, birds for example, birds are butterflies, extremely hard to capture. Sometimes you may have a slight blur, needs a bit of sharpening. Detail is always a good one for birds and butterflies, for those highlights to come through. But I don't need it at the moment, so I'm going to turn them down. Okay, masking. Masking basically determines which edges are sharpened. Yes, you can select areas which you want to be sharpened. Let's have a look. With masking, if I leave it at 0, so I put my sharpening up, put my radius up, put my detail up, So that look quite grainy. If I leave masking at 0, it's pretty much going to sharpen a lot of the image, most of the image. If I put it down to 100, you can see it only really sharpens the most prominent edges. You see along the plane here. So if you want to sharpen the whole image, leave masking at 0. If you just want to sharpen the most prominent edges, of course, bump it up until you're happy. Let's put these guys down. Right, noise reduction. As you know, noise is graininess. Luminous, it's light captured by the sensor. Again, when you're doing noise reduction, keep the image at about 100% or more if you prefer. You can see the graininess in the image. Okay, so I can put it at 100. Put the sharpening up so I can give you a better idea of noise. Okay. So, luminance, noise, start to adjust. You can see that noise disappear. It's always best, because there's a lot of third-party software that deals with noise reduction. It's always best to adjust noise in the raw editor. There you go. So I put that up. Try not to overdo it with the luminance on the reduction, because more often than not I've had an image myself, it's been a bit grainy, so I've gone through it quickly and I've just gone bang, stick the luminance all the way up, and I've lost a hell of a lot of detail in the image. So be careful when you're dealing with noise reduction. At the moment I'm pretty pleased with the noise in this image. It's not a great deal. Perhaps I can bump it up to about 17 or so if I really want to take care of it. Another one is colour, which is colour noise. That's not really in this image, but sometimes you've noticed yourself when you've been editing an image and you've got blue and red speckles in the image. They're usually red and green, but they can be blue. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Okay, so I go into the HSL and grayscale. So HSL is basically the hue, saturation, and luminance. Hue is going to change the range of a particular colour, so I can get the desired tone. For example, with the blue. Have a look at blue on hue. You'll be able to see yourself where it says blues. I've got a really light blue all the way to purple. So I can now play around, as you can see, it's starting to go more of an aqua colour. If I put it down, it's going to go purple. And you want to be careful when doing this, because what you don't want is unrealistic colours. Like if I decide to edit this in HSL and I bump the blue all the way up, then I've got a ridiculous purple sky, and then it's clearly unrealistic. Pretty happy with the blue at the moment, so I don't need to change the blue. I'm happy with the colours in the whole photo, to be honest. There's nothing I really need to change, but sometimes it will come in handy for colour correction. Okay. Saturation, as you know, enhances the richness of the colour. Like I said earlier on the basic settings, rather than just bumping the overall saturation up, take time to do it here. So it's individual colours, like reds, oranges, yellows, greens, aquas, blues, purples, and magentas. So for example, if we have a look at my red smoke here, there's actually a lot of red colouring in the smoke, as you can see. If I bump the saturation, it doesn't really do a great deal. It's mostly magenta and purple. If I bump them up, you can see magenta. Again, be careful not to go overboard with saturation. And the purple. Okay, so we've got a much richer colour. Okay, luminance. It's basically the brightness of the particular colours that we're looking at here. So for blue, the sky, or the smoke actually, we've got blue smoke as well. It's pretty dark. If I put it down, it's dark. Doesn't look very appealing. If I put it up, it's too bright. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put it up a bit. Just will highlight the blue smoke. So I needed to highlight the blue smoke, obviously because it's blue smoke on a blue sky. The whites are fine, purples are fine, so I bumped it up to take care of the blues. As you can see, if I have a look at the magenta, I bump it up. If you look at this section here, let's have a gander here. You'll see the changes taking place. Dark, light. Again, be careful with luminance. If you put it up too much, it can get pretty grainy. And you start to get these horrible patches in the colours. So don't overdo it. So I'm pretty much just going to keep that there. And I bump the purples up a bit. Okay, and the noise reduction earlier will take care of the graininess here. Alright, so the smoke is looking a lot better. Brilliant. Split toning. Split toning is pretty much better. If you go back to HSL and grayscale, convert to grayscale. It's not very appealing with this photograph purely because of the colours that we want to be showing off. In grayscale, it's basically black and white, as you can see, but you do have adjustable colour filters. So I would recommend, if you want to create black and white images, convert them to grayscale in a raw editor. Don't just desaturate images, that's just taking all the colour out. So if I play around with some colours, let's have a look, the blue filter. Even though the image is black and white, you can see for yourself, I'm playing around with blue and it's still affecting the image. So we're going to put back to colour. Okay. Yeah, split toning. With the split tone, you can tint the highlighted pixels with one shade, and then you can tint the shadow values with a complete different shade. Like I said, it's mostly used on grayscale. So if we just have a quick look. Okay, so you got hue and saturation for highlights and shadows. So if I put a red colour or orangey colour, you can see just that one colour coming through on the highlights. And if I decide to have more of a blue colour on the shadows, I'll bump the saturation up. You can start to see that I'm getting blue and red. Also you can work out the balance. So I've just got mostly red. I'll go nuts with the saturation here. It's going to look a bit crazy, but okay, good example. Alright, I've got a nice purpley colour here. You can see the reds, you can see the blues. And then you can adjust the balance to whatever way you like. Okay, so I'm not going to bother with split toning. Like I said, you can give it a go. It can make nice effects on coloured images as well, but it is mostly used for grayscale. Okay, lens correction. Basically, with the lens correction, you can look at things like distortion. Like if I give you an example, if I pull it in, I'll push it out. So if you have, for example, a fisheye, which pretty much look more like that. So if you do like the fisheye effect, you can do it yourself. A distortion, or if you have a fisheye photo, you want to try and flatten it out, you can use it like this and create a nice wide angle effect. Okay, and vignette. Obviously sometimes you do get the dark, shadowy areas in the corner. This will help you out. If I bump it up, things start to turn white. Put it down, black. More often than not, you will see unattractive black shadows in the corners. So what you can do then, just put it up to white. It should cancel it out. Set your midpoint, like so. And this is pretty good if you use a filter. Like sometimes with the density filters, you'll get this sort of effect. Almost like a black ring going around your image. So what you do then, just bump it up till you get a nice white colour, and that should cancel it out for you. So put these values back to 0 because we haven't got that problem. Effects. Myself, I wouldn't worry about effects too much. You can just add grain. If I have a look here, which is pretty cool if you're trying to create an old photograph effect. Then you've got your vignette. Rather than correcting, like the last example, we're creating. So you can have a white or a black. If I wanted to add a slight vignette, set my midpoint. You can change the shape too, the roundness. Okay. And you can feather it, so you can have it, well, it's more like a frame because it's such a hard line. Or you can feather it all the way. Creates a nice effect. Okay. I'm just going to put these back to 0. Alright. Okay, so camera calibration. Basically, the only time you really need to worry about this, if you're looking to change the tone of your colours. Obviously you get RGB, red, green, blue. So if the colour calibration is off in camera, then don't worry because you can correct it here. Like for example, if I use the blues, if I had a more purple looking sky, then I come onto here and I can make it more of a blue. And then you can saturate it. So it's only going to saturate the blue. Okay, so that's pretty much it. It'll take some getting used to. There are quite a lot of controls. More often than not, the only ones you'll probably use when editing in RAW is going to be the basics. We'll have another tutorial come in on adjustment brushes, as you can see up here. Okay, but for now, this is the basics. So have a go at them. Have a play around with your tone curve, detail, sharpening, also noise reduction if need be. Don't forget 100%, so you can see clearly what you're doing in the live preview. HSL, grayscale, very useful tool if you're looking to saturate a particular tone, or brighten a particular tone, or darken, or if you want to convert an image to black and white. Split toning, lens correction, effects, camera, calibration, presets. That's what you can do with presets. If you like what you've created and you pretty much like to use it again, new preset, or you can name it whatever you want. Okay, so that'll be there. So that's pretty much it. What you can do then, you can either save the image as it is, like we've got here, or you can open it into Photoshop, where you can put some crazy filters on it, cut out, sketch, whatever. But for now, we're just going to save it. Jets as a JPEG, or you can save it as a DNG, which is digital negative, or a TIFF. Basically, with a TIFF, it's a lot larger than a JPEG, but it won't lose as much quality, because when you saved as a JPEG, there is a lot of compression. So if we select TIFF, you will get a large image, but you won't lose as much detail, you won't lose as much colour than you would with JPEG. So if you print in, select a TIFF. Compression, none. If you're just going to upload it, most websites do support TIFF, such as Flickr, but what they'll do is they'll convert it to JPEG anyway. So you may as well just save it as a JPEG. Maximum quality, and you're ready to rock and roll. And that's that. Done. Just select done, and it's gone. Anyway, that's it from me, guys. If you want to have a try of your own raw files, then please upload them to Photographer Universe, the Facebook group. All the relevant links will be in the description below, and I hope you learned something new. Yeah, so that's it from me. Thank you very much. Ta-ra, guys.